Good morning, good morning, good morning. I am back. And for those of you who are with me live, you just saw me yesterday live. So, yes, I am very active in having these conversations with these amazing people. So, if you are listening to me on replay, welcome back to the Black Mind Garden podcast, where we are remapping minds so you can create a life you design. And today I have this is a this is his third time being on with me. And that is because the conversations that we have are so incredible, so necessary, and so applicable, not only in intimate relationships, but in all relationships. And so today we have back for a three-timer, Len Sturdivant. He is a relationship coach. He is the owner of Relationship Coach .pro. And I am looking forward to us talking about this topic called vertical intimacy and talking about how it strengthens relationships. So welcome back, Lynn. It's so good to have you back. I know this is, you're gonna be like one of those recurring guest hosts that I have like every couple of months.
I love it. I love it. I love getting the information out there. So a big component of what I do is psychoeducation. So it's not
Yes.
just coaching. It's I
Yes.
want you to learn this for yourself. So yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, just to bring those listeners who may not have heard our previous episodes, which I will say, if you haven't heard our previous episodes, you want to go back, you want to go ahead and subscribe to the Black Mind Garden so you don't miss an episode. But you also want to go back through the old episodes and find Lynn. We've had some amazing conversations. Go ahead and kind of update, though, the audience on what it is that you do, who you are, where you are.
I am Len Sturdivant, relationship coach pro. I help couples who want to change how they communicate with one another, how they deal with one another, and to remove all of the childhood stuff that's impacting their relationship.
Yeah.
I use a lot of psychoeducation, so this is right up my alley, and just helping couples to move to the next level and put an end to the intergenerational dysfunction that just continues to roll down the hill until somebody falls on the sword and stops it. And so that's what I help couples to do.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. So, we have talked about a few things over the past episodes, and one thing that has kept coming up, a theme that you have continued to bring into our conversations, is this idea, this concept, this principle of vertical intimacy. And so, I'd love to hear you, just sort of like talk a little bit about that and what that is, and what you've seen, like how that impacts the relationship from its beginning.
Hmm. The impact, well, vertical intimacy is how well do we get along when we're on our feet? How well do we communicate? How well do we function? Do we coordinate well? Do we, move in sync? That vertical intimacy, probably 80% of the relationship is going to depend on how well you get along on your feet.
Mhm.
Horizontal intimacy, that's fairly easy. That's only 20% of the relationship. It's important 20%. But how well we get along on our feet. Are you into me? See?
Mhm.
So, the love languages is one of the ways I help to start that process of vertical intimacy. What's
Mhm.
my love language? Is it
Mhm.
touch? Is it gifts? Is it affirmation? Whatever that is, vertical intimacy is the foundation for reciprocity. I do it for you, you do it back for me. And we have this wonderful thing going on while we're on our feet.
Mhm.
So once that reciprocity is going back and forth, the chances of resentment is practically nil.
Yeah.
Can't it can't reciprocity and resentment cannot live in the same space. So a lot of couples come to me with this underlying resentment. And
Mhm.
so, we just kind of do a little digging to get to the underlying resentment, and then we replace it with reciprocity.
Right. Yeah, I think that, just in terms of like this whole idea of intimacy in general is this connection. It's like the deeper connection, and a lot of times when we're seeking a deeper connection and we don't know how to do it um, without that physical connection, then we just fail to connect, period, right?
Mhm.
And so I one of the people I like is John Gottman. He talks about bids for connection, and we don't always recognize when someone is bidding for connection, bidding for that intimacy, calling for that intimacy. And so learning this concept of vertical intimacy and what that looks like is so important. And I think it's important to recognize that, as we talk about it in the form in the realm of intimate relationships, intimate partner relationships, I think it's very useful also in friendships, in parent-child relationships,
Whole spectrum.
in yeah,
Mhm.
broad spectrum, because if you can't create intimacy vertically, then you can't really connect with people, like outside of this idea that intimacy has to be horizontal. So I think that really deconstructing what intimacy really is, this, and I love the way you broke it down. I've heard it that way before, like into you I see, right? Into you I
Right.
see, right? into
Right.
into me you see, right?
Correct.
And so
Right.
when a person can see into you, no matter who they are, you're connected. And then dialogue is possible, communication is possible,
Vulnerability
love
is
is
possible.
possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You need it. I mean, but we don't have the prototype. So if I grow up as a boy child and I never see a man love my mama,
Hmm.
and I don't have a prototype in my mindset, I'm going to grow up. I'm getting my cues from out everything that's external: TV,
Hmm.
friends,
Hmm.
family, cohorts,
Hmm.
you know. Um, and I try to piece together this mosaic of what I think it should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's equally devastating for the girl child. A girl child needs to see a man love her mama so she
Hmm.
can know what to expect, what it's like to be adored. It's
Yeah.
you that being adored, that is one of the biggest blocks I have with a lot of my female clients, that they don't know how to be adored. Never seen it.
Hmm.
One of them interpreted it as her significant other was gay
Hmm.
because he opened the door, because he got the check, because he
Right.
brought the flowers, because
Right.
he did all the things that he saw, but she didn't.
That's
And we can talk about that
interesting.
double daddy deficit in the next episode,
Right.
because if I don't have a father and you don't have a father, when we come together, it's going to impact how we relate to one another, because it's there's no prototype. But anyway,
That is so interesting. I never thought of it that way. I mean, although I've heard that where, if for some women, if a man shows up too vulnerable, then that's just as much of a problem as if they show up, toxically masculine,
yeah,
right?
thug life. Yeah,
Right. And
yeah.
so it's interesting because I think you're right. Like women, as much as men, need to learn how to what intimacy looks like, and how to receive and give, like how to perpetuate that and reciprocate that, that type of closeness, that type of bond.
Mm.
I'd love to talk about what that actually looks like, because I think that, it's easy to say, well, this is what we need to do. And if you have no context for it, then it's like, well, what is it that we need to do exactly? Right? What is it that we need to do specifically to begin to cultivate this closeness in the people we want to be close to?
Hmm. And we can separate the division between agape love and eros, right? You
Correct.
need both of them are vertical intimacies. One's for
Yes.
family and friends, and one's for my
First.
lover, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
So,
So let's
so
start there. Let's start by distinguishing, the what that looks like.
agape love, my best friend, Marty, and Marty's my ride or die. If I need to borrow a car or I need to borrow some money, he's like, we have this reciprocity going between us. It's not asymmetrical, and it's beautiful. Hey, how you feeling? I check in on him. He checks in on me. You know,
Yeah.
and we have this agape brotherly love,
Yeah.
and with friends, with certain family members, you can have that agape love.
I want to just like say something about this between men. I think that, with women, that type of intimacy, in some cases, not all cases, because I know, and I actually raised my hand as one of those people that used to be a person who couldn't get close to women, right? And so I think it's important from that standpoint. Um, but I think the society has created a conversation about intimacy, agape love or agape intimacy between men. And I
Mhm.
think it's important that that gets deconstructed,
Oh yeah,
because because that there's this we have a fairly homophobic and transphobic culture,
that part.
and so then of course that brings a fear around creating closeness, creating that agape love and that agape intimacy between same sex, particularly in men, but
Hmm.
sometimes even in women as well. And deconstructing what, like, first of all, deconstructing the phobia and the
Sure.
heterosexism, like that's the first part. And then there's the, understanding that that agape connection is really needed. That intimacy is really needed. Um,
It's funny because I can see, and I've been to conferences and all this stuff. I can see two black women who don't know each other from a can of paint. Girl, where you get your hair done? Girl, where you get them shoes from? Girl, you looking good in that dress. Who snatched your head up?
right. You
And
are beautiful.
right,
Queen.
right. Yes, compliment each other. And you see two guys, in the same walkway pass by each other.
So, so.
You're lucky you're not getting a mean mug, like, you know. So when I began to deconstruct that, 85% of, I think it's higher, 85% of black boys are growing up without a dad in the house. Right. I thank God for my grandfather. He gave me that vertical intimacy. He's tying my tie and he's showing me how to do it. He's about 6 inches from my face.
Hmm.
I can smell Listerine, Colgate,
Hmm.
aftershave,
Hmm.
all stuff that I use to this day, right?
Hmm.
It was very, the reflection that came back to me from him was that all parts of me
Hmm.
is okay. And
Hmm.
it's important for me because he's male, I'm a male. I'm getting
Hmm.
that reflection, which is also important for black boys. A mama can't
Hmm.
give you a male reflection.
Right, exactly.
So it's real important to get that. And same thing with women, but it's reversed.
Hmm.
85% of black women are growing up with mama in the house.
Hmm.
So here's this, we're kind of skewed out the gate
Hmm.
because and so you hear this all the time, like mothers are harder on the daughter than they are on the son.
Hmm.
So when the vacuum is created, when the father is no longer in the system, it creates a vacuum.
Right,
Nature abhors a vacuum. So
right.
somebody gets sucked into that role, girl child, boy child,
Hmm.
and you function as a pseudo spouse.
Hmm.
So going back to the vertical intimacy. So if I get that early on, I can have some identity as to who I am. This half of me is my father. If I don't know this half of me,
Hmm.
then whatever gets scribed onto that half of me is what I'll become.
Right.
If I don't take a hold of the pen. which is what I try to help my clients with.
Right.
So that vertical intimacy from the same sex is critical for the boy child. Now, when you grow up and you don't have that vertical intimacy from another male, homosexuality got conflated with vertical intimacy
Right.
because it fills in the vacuum and that gap. You remember that gap. Nature abhors a space, an empty space, and so I think homosexuality got conflated with vertical intimacy and
Mhm.
actually took over the title. So you
Oh,
don't get
interesting.
a lot of eye contact with guys. It's not guys. It's a quick. I know you don't
Right.
know anything
Mhm.
more than 4.5 seconds. What you looking at? What you looking at? It can get
Not even 4.5 seconds. It's like
yeah,
three,
yeah. I mean,
one
it's
second.
you're right, right.
1,000.
I gotta defend myself because again, this part of me is missing.
Mhm.
So it's almost a primitive response. You know,
Mhm.
uh, you know, I gotta swell up. I gotta look bigger. I gotta.
Right. Right.
Um, Whereas women give each other that kind of 4 seconds is girl, do I know you? You
Mhm.
go to school at Central? Yeah, I went to school. Oh, yeah, I knew your face. That, and it
Mhm.
goes to a whole conversation. So, um, trying to get the black male back into the home so that we can raise. We're 3 generations deep of fatherless boys.
Mhm.
Three. I
Yeah.
mean, 10 to 15% of boys are growing up in the house with a dad from 0 to 15,
Mhm.
and
Wow.
those marriages that stayed together, that boy has a conceptualization of how his dad loved his mom, how his
Mhm.
mom loved his dad.
Yeah.
That's also important. But when I don't grow up with that,
Mhm.
my chances of vertical intimacy with the opposite sex is even strained, but even with the same sex is even more strained. It's strained. So
Yeah.
that's hard because you don't have a prototype in which to rely on, to refer to.
Yeah. And I want to, I want to speak to the fact that even when there's a single parent household, when you have the opportunity to co-parent, or you have the opportunity to fill in those gaps with, grandfather, or if there are community of men that are very close to, like, so for me personally, like as a single mom with a very involved dad, even though he's in a different state, we co-parent, very closely. We're very much communication. So the relationship that he sees is still one of respect and honor, even though our intimate personal relationship didn't work out. And the relationship that he has with his father and his brother, his older brother, like he's still getting that aspect of that vertical intimacy, even though his dad does not live in the home with us, right?
Mhm.
And then there is, I have been intentional, and I think this speaks to, like, for the single moms out there, like it's like being intentional about having role models, male role models in the boy's life. So in my son's life, like I have, a best friend who I trust when I have to go out of town to work, when I have to go and do my trainings, which actually I was, at a conference last weekend, and then this next weekend I have to go up for a training. This person can come. I trust him to come and to actually stay and keep my son, right? And so, like, that's the level of role modelness
Mhm.
that he is, a best friend for 15 plus, almost 20 years now. And then there's my father and my biological father and my bonus dad, right? Right. And so then he's got those people. And then there's the dojo, and there's like that the male role models, the male teachers that are in our community. And so I've been very intentional
Mhm.
about setting that up to get these very levels of connection
Mhm.
with men, positive, empowered connection with men. so that he experienced this this vertical type of intimacy.
Mhm. It's so important because I get to define who I am. My self identity is tied into it. When I ask the question for males and females a lot, a question I ask all of my clients: how do you love yourself?
Yeah.
If I don't have a conceptualization of self, then the 90% of the people answer that question. I don't know.
Hmm. Yeah.
I don't even know who I am. And when I ask the question, how do you love yourself? I'm asking you, how do you love the inner child?
Right.
That the driver of the vertical intimacy
Yeah.
is the inner child. And the inner child is looking for that connection,
Hmm.
looking for that reflection and connection. That's about right. So yeah.
Right. And I think that when we can love that inner child, we can have those reflections in our family and in our community of ourselves, and we can experience that vertical intimacy. It has us be more sure of who we are, more confident in who we are, more grounded in who we are, and thus frees us up to be able to give love freely, right? To learn to give love freely, even to like continue to learn, because we're always learning.
Right. Right.
Identify what my love language is and what your love, have these dialogues, you know, and to create close relationship with the same sex and opposite sex, whether they're intimate partner, whether they're not, in a healthy way.
Yeah. Love languages is certainly foundational in learning the vertical intimacy part, because you have to do those things: time, touch, affirmation, gifts, and
Hmm.
service are
Exactly.
those, so if my vertical, and for I know with a lot of my male clients, affirmation is usually pretty heavy, because you don't get a lot of affirmations, attaboys and go
Yeah.
in there and get it, and you're brilliant and you're beautiful and try harder. You can get a lot of that.
Hmm.
So when you get a little taste of it, it's like,
Yeah.
it's emotional nutrition, because that is going to enable me to have vertical intimacy as a part of who I am. When
Hmm.
I get my 5 love languages met, then it's a lot easier. I'm not as suspicious,
Hmm.
right? Or I'm not carrying feelings about males. Um, if my mom didn't like my dad and I carry my mom's feelings, that's going to put an even further gap
Hmm.
in there. So that's going to be 10 sessions easy, just to to get out
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
I don't have to carry my mom's feeling about men.
Right.
So
Right.
that's
Wow.
that's huge. Yeah.
That's huge. That's huge. So in terms of like cultivating this vertical intimacy between like in between people, what does that look like? Like what is that what are the what does it look like out in the world? What does it look like between two people to cultivate that vertical intimacy between two grown people?
Right. I think the first task you got to master is, how do I love myself?
Mhm.
And I have a lot of my singles to reparent themselves, to
Mhm.
do those things that wasn't done for you early on, so that you can begin to address, this is that half of me that's missing, so let me scribe onto that half what I want it to be. I want to be kind, I want to be caring, I want to be loving, I want to be friendly, I want to be not suspicious, so to reparent, it's great if you have a mate who can
Mhm.
help you to reparent that part of you.
Mhm.
I think it starts off with reparenting. I think inculcation or repetition kind of sinks it in deeper, so that I'm
Mhm.
not paranoid. And when I'm around a bunch of other males, I'm thinking, I'm looking around the room. I don't want to do that, and I was caught up into that. So, but what the repetition I performed with myself is, Len, it's okay to speak first. It's okay.
Mhm.
It's okay. Actually, when you speak first, you do have the power.
Mhm.
Hey, how you doing, brother?
Yeah. Yeah.
Most people are taken aback. Yeah, am I? you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, dialogue is really good, like meaningful conversation,
Hmm.
not just that surface level conversation, right? But meaningful conversation, really getting to know, the person, like asking those, um, like I think there's like a level to which you go deep in conversation, you ask those more personal type questions, right? More intimate type questions,
Right.
and
I
have
can
those
take the
intimate
risk.
conversations. Like, what's
Yeah.
important to you? What's
Right.
important to you, right? Like, what do you care about? What are you up to? Like, you get to it doesn't have to be hard, right? It doesn't have to be, you know, it doesn't have to be deeply personal, but it could be like, as simple as the start of the conversation is like, what's important to you?
Right.
What
That
do you care
involves
about?
risk. Right. That's going to involve some risk, and and the risk is the reflection that comes back to me.
Right,
A child doesn't know who he or she is until they look into your eyes.
right.
And what comes back to that child is that all parts of me are okay.
Hmm.
So once I'm comfortable with the risk, because if I reach out to a brother, hey brother, how you doing? Like, yeah. So now that's
Hmm.
gonna shut me down from doing, like, you know what? I took a risk. It didn't come back to me commensurate with my expectations. I'm
Hmm.
not gonna take that risk again.
Yeah,
So it's me overcoming the don't take it personally. See,
yeah.
it's hard not to, because this is the same sex, and I'm expecting a
Right.
level of just basic vertical intimacy. Not even getting that.
Right. Well, oftentimes too, there's like that initial layer of protection. And I think sometimes you have to push through that initial layer of protection. Like, if there's yeah, what's up? It's like, yeah, what's going on, man? Like, and then, if there's still that resistance and pushback, then there's obviously, then that might not be, again, that might be the person to, but I think when you if you're spending time with a person, let's say if you're in the same class, or if you're in a conference with a person and you meet a person, what's up, you're sitting next to them, for after a moment you get related, and getting related, that's the part, that's the end. Getting related, what's the common ground? Because once you get related and find the common ground, you can start asking those more meaningful questions. But we
Hmm.
don't even often get that far. We don't often even get to the finding common ground part. It's just the whatever the response activates in us that has us to recoil and be like, oh no, no, not that person. Then we sort of like give that up. But I think at the end of the day, everybody's longing for that connection. Like, that's what people want. And they don't know how to take it when it comes, and they don't know
Yeah.
how to give it. They don't have the language
Hmm.
or the skill set to be able to communicate the connection that they want in that moment.
Right.
They don't know what to do with whatever is coming at them.
Right. Well, I've got to have a big enough my emotional bank account has to be on full for me to try it.
Yeah.
That implies a risk.
Right.
So how I replenish my emotional bank account so that I have enough, so if somebody makes a withdrawal, I don't I don't crash, I don't collapse. But if
Hmm.
my emotional bank account's on E,
Right.
I'm not taking a lot of risk with anything. I'm
Hmm.
probably going to stay in my head
Right.
until I deem it safe to come out. And so, and when I stay in my head, I'm safe.
Right. Well, I tell you what, that it's interesting, because that means that it's basically comes back to what you said earlier. How do I love myself? How do I fill my emotional bank account? How do I, you know, take care of myself in that way? And I think that's important. That's an important sort of full circle to come to. Like, at the end of the day, if we want to cultivate intimacy between people, we have to be intimate with ourselves. We have to into me see, right? Like, into us see ourselves, right? We have to cultivate the intimacy with ourselves, like, just like you said, full circle. How do you love yourself, right? So when we cultivate that, that means healing our traumas. That means acknowledging, because you can't heal before you acknowledge. So you have to be open and willing to look,
Mhm.
to acknowledge, so that you can heal those traumas and those old conversations that have you unable to and unwilling to open, to love yourself first, and then to forge that connection with another. So I think
Yes.
that's a wonderful full circle.
Yeah. The only way out is to go back through.
Right.
It's for most of us, it's a very unpleasant trip. So you need to be with a professional who can kind of hold your hand as you go back through, because as you go back through, you begin to extinguish the triggers that
Hmm.
were left
Hmm.
from not being recognized, not being acknowledged, not being validated. You begin to extinguish those triggers, and once all those triggers are out, then I can open up for more possibilities because I'm not being triggered. You know, and it's not this adversarial thing. When two black
Yeah.
males look at each other, it's no longer adversarial. It's more of a you know. And so my friend, because I'm an only child, so my friends who have brothers and sisters, I say you just don't know. You're blessed to have blood brothers and sisters. Oh, you can have all of mine here. Take them. I'm like, you
Right.
don't mean that. You
Right.
really don't mean that.
Right. Well, part two, part three of infinite conversation. I love this conversation. I think this is just the beginning. Um, and I want the audience to know, and I just appreciate you continuing to come on and have these conversations. I think we have to give people very um, workable nuggets to incorporate, right? And so I think this is a really good nugget in terms of cultivating that intimacy with oneself, being willing to acknowledge and see and be willing to heal those traumas to forge a relationship with self and others. And so I look forward to, future conversations. You've already named a couple of more topics just in this one
Oh,
conversation.
yes,
So,
yes.
but once again, I'd love you to tell the audience, like, how can they get in touch with you? How can they, if they want to work with you,
Sure.
they want to invite you to speak or do a workshop, how they get in touch with you?
My web address is relationshipcoach.pro. There's a little info box at the bottom of the page. Name, number, um, email address, and I follow up with that vigorously. So I'll probably be in contact with you the same day. Um, I love this work. This is why I think I'm the only person on the internet who's doing 2-hour sessions. So
Yeah, yeah,
most folks are like, I remember when I was in school, I said, you know what? People are walking out at the end of the clinical hour. They're not feeling satisfied. They boo-hooing all the way to the car. They wrap their car around a
yeah.
pole. You're liable. So we
Mm.
get in 2 hours. And so I think that's important to get your point across. Being heard is so close to feeling loved. Many people can't tell the difference between the two.
Yeah,
So that's what we do
yeah.
with Relationship Coach Pro.
All right. Well, we'll have all that, as you all know, we'll have it in the show notes. And if you're on YouTube with us, in the description. And so thank you again, Len, for coming and being with us on the podcast. Of course, I always ask of the audience, please share this with someone. Please share this podcast and leave a review. Leave a review to let people know that this is a podcast worth listening to. We want to get the message out there as we open people's minds, as we cultivate emotional fluency, communication, intelligence. We really want to empower people. So share this episode with a friend, a family, a colleague, and leave a review and let us know how you like this episode on your favorite podcast platform. And with that, we will see you on the next episode. So thank you again, Len, for coming. And for the listeners, just keep empowering yourself and keep empowering others. And just know that, we're here to empower you. So have a great rest of the day and a great rest of the week. Namaste.